Damn 2018, you gotta stop it with these amazing releases. I mean, most of the time I like to humble myself by not giving out such grand and amazing reviews, but it's getting really hard this year. So, yeah, let's dive into the next one. Reach out in this town. Galaphere 347, their debut album, which is self-titled. So, Galaphere 347 is a Anglo-Scandinavian conglomeration of a whole bunch of different other bands. There are 4 members, and they comprise of individuals from Henry Fool, White Willow, Anglard or Anglagard, I always call them Anglagard, but whatever, and West Burrowland. Each member kind of does a whole bunch of different items on this album. It's not like this person is specifically involved within the vocals, this person is specifically involved within the keyboards, this person is specifically involved with the guitars. And this album's also mixed by Andy Jackson, who's done a lot of work for Pink Floyd in the past, and so it has that very professional touch on this album, and the musicianship on this is just outstanding. Like, in my mind, this is what real retro prog should sound like. And I find with retro prog nowadays, it's like too heavily influenced from the past. And what I want out of a good retro prog album is using techniques from the past, but bringing the music forward. And in that sense, it's more of like a progressive rock on both sides of the equation, not just, using the techniques of a progressive rock band, as well as moving the music forward. So I want to get the only real negative that I could see within this band out first. Like, I want to just discuss that. And that is really the vocal work on this. Like, not necessarily the lyrical content, but just the vocals on this. I believe the main vocal is from Stephen James Bennett, and Stephen does a fine job at it. Like, he services the songs quite well in that sense of providing that vocals, but I just feel like it's still too humbled. It's not quite like taking center stage and really stepping up to the plate. Like, if we're using that kind of a baseball analogy, I feel like he bunts instead of tries to swing for the home run. And there's a few parts within this album that I feel like this style of vocal work doesn't do the song justice, but throughout the song, he does bring it around, and it does have that very emotive and very captivating presentation that this album has within its individual identity. Because that is something that this album does bring to its forefront, is the identity of that. And I feel like the vocal work of Steven does bring that to the forefront, even though I was kind of hoping that every once in a while he would just kind of belt it out, and it might just be him, being a little too humble, and I want him to step out a little bit more. So that's really the only downside or the only knock I can see against this album. Everything else on this album is just brilliant, and just like, it blew me away. Like, this album only has 3 songs, and each of the 3 songs are well over the 10-minute mark. Like, the shortest track is the first track of The Voice of Beauty Drowned, and this comes in at about like 10 and a half minutes or so, and it does a great job of setting up the album. And when I first listened to it, I'm like, damn, this is really, really good. And it is the weakest track off of this album, and that's saying something. When I was first listening to it, I'm like, damn, this is really, really good, and it just happened to be the weakest track. This song really takes its time to get going, and it isn't until like the 2.5 minute mark that it really explodes. Like, up until that point, it's just that very somber and intimate moment where we have with Steven and the a little bit of the guitar work, a little bit of that atmosphere, and it's almost math rocky in that sense of just that like space rock. And then when we come into the chorus of like that 2.5 minute mark, up to that point it had been in a minor key, and once it explodes, it transitions into a major key. And I really like that dichotomy. Like, I really like how it sets up the song in a very minor tone where you're just like, okay, I'm feeling that atmosphere going on here. And then when it explodes within that major chord, you're like, oh man, this is like a really good time. And it kind of follows suit within the lyrical content, saying, it's 5 a.m., it's 6 a.m., I don't really want to get going within the day, I just really want to be with my friends. And then that's when it turns around, and it really ushers us forth within that track. And from that point, it really doesn't stop. Like, we've got that synthesizers coming through, we've got that really grandiose soundscapes now, and it's just that celebration of sound within that sense. And that's really what retro prog does very, very well, within that celebration of the music. And even after that 2 minutes of, that we're having great times with our friends, it dives down a little bit more with a flute introduction. This reminds me of something, say, that an early Genesis would do. And just overall, like, this song was just a journey. And as I mentioned before when I introduced this song, this is the down point of the album. This is the weaker of the 3 tracks. When we come into the second track of The Fallen Angel, this is the longest track of 15 minutes and 35 seconds. I particularly like this track, and I keep going back and forth of which one I like more between Barbarella's Lover and The Fallen Angel. And I think I like Fallen Angel just a little bit better, only because Fallen Angel goes on a much grander journey within the music. Right at the beginning, we are introduced to the main theme of the song, and I love when a song does this, when they introduce a theme very, very subtly. It's not right in your face, it's not like, well, pay attention to this, it's just a very subtle kind of introduction of the theme. And then from there we ebb and flow within the track itself. We go through a lot of different landscapes, and what I love is the groove of this song. The groove that just eases us into. It's so smooth. It's like you're walking through silk. It reminds me, and one of the first main playout section reminds me of Camel. And this is like they took the Camel playbook and just rejuvenized it within their own way, shape, and form. And again, that ebb and flow. So we had that like very optimistic jam session, and then when we like leave that section into the midpoint, it gets really dark all of a sudden. Like they're saying, I loved you, I needed you, what's going on? And that music reflects it in such a very strong way. And this is where we have that rhythm section, and it's that very like dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. And even this end part, once we get through that like really strange transition and that structured dark point that then brings us through into a very optimistic and airy part, and then we fly into that end part. And again, that end part, that really great like ebb and flow within it, that I will never let you down aspect, and it's repeated again and again. It's almost like the centerpiece of this track. And each time I think that they're not able to do something better, they prove me wrong. Like throughout the entire song, I'm like, damn, this is really good. How are they going to make it any better? And each time they do, and it builds upon itself. Instead of just kind of like letting that one final verse go, they decide to do it a couple times, and it folds upon itself. Again, at this point, I'm like, damn, this is so good. How are they going to do this any better? At the very end, they reintroduce that theme that they presented at the beginning, but in a much bigger and grander scale, as you should, and it just ties the whole song together. And at the end, I'm like, I'm almost exhausted of just how grand the scale of this song is, and it's mind-blowing. So, coming into the last track of Barbarella's Lover, this track, like, again, as I said, like, each track kind of builds upon itself, and that's not only within the tracks, that's within the overall album as a whole. Barbarella's Lover is probably the darkest of all the tracks, and the thing that it has going for it is both its simplicity as well as its complexity. The simplicity is the song's foundation is just that rhythm section, and it's the rhythm section that's intoxicating within this. I love the drumming work on this track. This is the real highlight. Like, it's so solid. It's just the foundation of the song is so solid that you couldn't even take a jackhammer to take it apart. Because the foundation of the song is so simple, they're able to decorate the rest of this track in a very complex way. Even though it's really just the same thing kind of repeated itself over and over again, they add more and more and more to each one, where it really blossoms into such a grand scale of sound that I'm surprised by the end of it. And again, they're using a very sneaky technique that's very easy to produce. Like, they're playing right into my heartstrings, right? Like, once we get into the end of the track, the main point is just an escalation of the scale where each kind of note goes higher and higher and higher and creates such a euphoric aspect within it. And then, like, flavored on top of that is this arpeggio movement that's going up and down the scale. And so on top of that, it's almost like you're playing with a yo-yo in an elevator that's just continuously going up. They're playing right into what I love about music. It's very easy, and it's a very like shortcut way, an underhanded way of providing just a great music, but it's also one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's so easy, anybody can do it. Yeah, but they actually did. And that's what I really love about Barbarella's Lover. Having everything work together in that masterful way of like a perfect puzzle just overall provides such a great track. And even though I go back and forth as to Fallen Angel and Barbarella's Lover of which one's my favorite, like, it's really neck and neck in terms of which one takes the endscape there. Both are just fantastic treats. So overall, this album blew me away. Even though I've been listening to this album for just over a week, I still see myself coming back time and time again, and I almost feel like a craving to listen to this album. Once I'm finished listening to it, I find myself going right back to The Voice of Beauty Drowned. Just because, like, I need that extra hit. In that sense, it's very addictive. Even though I don't want to oversaturate this year with such high praises, when an album comes through and blows me away like this does, I have to give it all the praises that I can. Galaphere's 347 album, I have to say it's an absolute masterpiece. I know, like, within past years, I haven't been giving out that rating to any albums, and this year we now have 4, so I'm almost like, at the one hand, I'm excited to dive into more albums that have been released this year, but at the same time I'm like, I can't oversaturate my album reviews with all these masterpieces. Like, it undervalues all the other reviews that I've done. So yeah, this album blew me away, and I'm very happy to give it the masterpiece status. I was, by the end there, actively looking for reasons not to give it that rating, and I honestly, in good conscience, couldn't find anything. So that's about it. That's all the gushing I've got for Galaphere 347. What did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Definitely have a listen to it. If you're a prog fan of any sort, you're going to really, really enjoy this album. It gets the note seal of approval, and good job for the first outing on this. I'm only looking forward to good things from this band. So let me know of your own comments about this album by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.